Yes. Coffee Conversations with Greg J is on. Happy New Year. It's the first Coffee Conversations of the year. You've put out a couple of videos and had a few activities around the Southern California market to continue our quest to promote culture. Coffee Conversations is our platform where we have casual but compelling dialogue, culturally relevant from a decidedly global perspective. Today's show, we really wanted to amplify our essence as we look across the headlines, as we look across the news and all around us. It seems like we're going backwards in terms of progress. Our civil rights are being assaulted at every turn. It's a very important election season. Folks, did the lady say that there has never been racism in America? She said that, didn't she? Folks around there believe in it too. We have so many struggles, homelessness, pandemic, all around the places. America is beginning to appear before our very eyes like we would never have imagined America to be. And so the question becomes, as we look across our history, where have we been and how have we won our rights? Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, but still we rise. And my estimation is that the Black church has been part of that, an essential ingredient to that, as we rise and stand against inequality that are so ingrained in the American mantra. Yeah, they say all men and women are created equal, but it's been rooted in slavery, Jim Crow, police brutality, redlining. The list goes on and on and on and on. And yet still we rise. We have success story after success story after success story. But those victories would not have been won were it not for the participation of the Black church. We just celebrated Dr. Martin Luther King. And, there he is, pastor coming out of Atlanta, Georgia, Montgomery, Alabama, leading the charge. Speaking for the people, leading marches on Washington. So we will say, hey, the Black church has its place in the struggle. And in these alarming times, we begin to reflect. We want to know, what is the gospel of social justice in these strenuous times? So again, flipping through my Rolodex. I still have a Rolodex. Got my phone too. But flipping through my Rolodex and say, oh man, good time to kick off the year of Coffee Conversations with Greg J, with one of my good friends. I got a couple pastors. I like to call and reflect on spiritual matters from time to time, and we've done a few things together across the span of time in our communities. Very, very active in the community, and I think he's here now, ladies and gentlemen. Pastor Kelvin Sauls. There he is. Can you hear me?
Jay, what's up, man? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
It's Thankful Thursday, Throwback Thursday, but I also call it Trusting Thursday, man. Yes, sir. Stop calling it Friday. We have all different kinds of names for Thursday, right? But I'm just glad to be hanging with you on this Thursday, my brother.
Man, me too, and so I was reflecting just before I pressed the go live button to say, wow, man, folks, if you're watching this, let's just pause and be thankful that you're even able to watch this today.
Yeah, Lord.
Let's say praise break. Man. Well, how you been doing there, Pastor? I mean, so much is going on in the world, and I know you have many points of advocacy. Before we jump into the substance of the matter, I do want to reflect with you and get your thoughts. I know that at one point you were the pastor of the Home United Methodist Church. It was the home of the Honorable Reverend James Lawson. They just honored him with what they named a street and all of that. It was a big deal. And I was last summer I was down in Memphis, Tennessee, and I got a chance to visit the Lorraine Motel where they murdered Dr. King. And attached to that structure is the National Civil Rights Museum. And in the narrative of the whole Dr. King story, I was so proud to see Reverend James Lawson was an integral thread in that narrative. I saw him, while he was standing up for the Memphis workers and speaking on saw films of him as a young man back in those days, and I never knew him like that. I've always known him as an elderly statesman, but as someone who has, walked alongside Reverend Lawson. What are your reflections as we have honored him recently?
Well, I had the privilege of being present for the celebration of the Lawson Mile, and I walked that mile with the folk. I'm glad I had the stamina to walk the mile. I the winter months I incubate. I don't get out for more exercises, but that was a great way to get my steps in, man. And boy, was it it was strategic. It was strategic steps, right? Mm-hmm. And I said that because for such a time as this, to be able to celebrate, the Lawson Mile, a shout out to, Council Member Heather Hutt and the president, of the LA Fed, Yvonne Wheeler. These, two phenomenal, leaders in our community, had the vision, and Bridge Street, who produced the event, just did an extraordinary job in pulling it together. So the reason why I think, Reverend, the work of Reverend Lawson is essential. Shout out to UCLA Labor Center for launching a class or some teaching around connecting, Reverend Lawson's work and that of Dolores Huerta in a course or class that the Labor Center is hooking up. So I hope to get to that at some point with some of our young advocates and organizers. But the significance of that is what I pick up on in the article that I wrote, sermon I preached 2 Sundays ago, MLK Sunday, and Cora the Sentinel was gracious enough to publish it in 2 parts. One was published last week. I sent that to you, and the other one was published. It's actually published today in the Sentinel. And the title of that piece is, why America may still go to hell. And that sermon was inspired in Memphis, where Reverend Lawson and Dr. King connected around strategic steps then, just like strategic steps with the Lawson Mile for such a time as this. And basically, the reason why that is significant, and the work of Reverend Lawson is because in Memphis, it was the convergence of really, civil and human rights with economic justice. Update that. It was the convergence of the fight for equality and the fight for equity, right? You see? Now, Reverend King talked about that. Dr. King talked about it in the so-called I Have a Dream speech, because you have to remember that Dr. King never named that speech, right? Named that speech. And consequently, they revised that speech and took out of it this convergence, you see, of equality and equity, because in so many ways they have distracted us from the fact that in that speech, Dr. King talks about the fact that, we've come to cash a check and we've been told, right, that there's insufficient funds, right, around that. So in Memphis, these connect, right? And then, Reverend Lawson, Dr. King then says, what good is it that we have access to the counter in the restaurant, right? But we ain't got no money to buy the food. So we ought to really be clear what's going on in Memphis. We need to be clear what's going on around the Lawson Mile, right? It's reminding us that for such a time as this, we have to understand that the enterprise of settler colonization and military occupation, that started, the United States, right? That is still going on, and until we connect the dots around these, and Dr. King then calls them the triple evils, right? Many times we're just going to be going around the same mountain. You see, the same mountain, of racial capitalism, the same mountain you see of militarism, the same mountain you see of racism, or Isabel Wilkerson casteism, origin that's just out right now. I'm just making connections here around the importance and significance of the strategic steps we took on dedicating the Reverend James Lawson Mile, the strategic steps that he took in Memphis with Dr. Martin Luther King, and how all of that is coming together right now. And we see, the whole undermining of Reconstruction by what's happening, or what has happened in both Idaho and in New Hampshire. So here we are, Greg, in 2024, right? And instead of, us, being willing to boldly soar in 2024, the system is still committed to clip our wings by any means necessary. Right? And so the question then becomes, I think, how do we deal, now with this trifecta of the intentional disruption of Reconstruction, right? Sure. The rewriting, of history, denialism, you see, by, what's happening in terms of, white supremacy, and most importantly, dealing with the blasphemy of WASP theology, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant theology, that in so many ways has justified the Holocaust with our, First Nation siblings, the Middle Passage, that human trafficking enterprise that took place across the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean, right? Here we are. You see that, colonized religion, that has facilitated enterprise, unfortunately has infected and affected how we, do what we do in the Black church. And so I think, I joined, Dr. Eddie Glaude, Professor of African American Studies at Princeton University. And sometimes you have to ask, right? You have to ask, is the Black church dead? Yes. Can the gospel be updated and upgraded, right, in a post-pandemic United States or a post-pandemic world?
Well, let's dissect that point right there, because that is a question I wanted to ask. I mean, listen, churching is different now. It's a whole new thing. The pandemic changed how folks even attend church, and then I think there's become a really increased, accelerated sense of apathy towards the church. But we need the Black church. The history shows that the Black church is an essential ingredient to our struggle. Is the Black church dead?
Well, I mean, I think it depends how you define the Black church, right? Find the Black church as a corporate, movement? Do you find the Black church by denomination? Do you define the Black church by, affiliation? Do you define the Black church by family? Do you define a Black church as individual? Right, as one who subscribed to a Methodism that is both Pan-African and that subscribes to liberation theology, we have a hymn, in Methodism that talks about I'm the church, you are the church is not a building, right? You see, I think, what we have to ask ourselves really is, is the Black church dead on all of those levels? So it begs for a multidimensional conversation. But I think, corporately speaking, if it's the Church of Jesus Christ, it cannot be dead. Upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell, right, will not, tear it down. So if any aspect of church or Black church is dead, it ain't. You see, a church that connects with the liberative and emancipatory Jesus Christ, right? That Jesus of Isaiah 58, that Jesus of Luke chapter 4, 18 to 20, that Jesus, right? Of the one who goes into the temple and basically seeks to liberate the temple, from capitalistic, tendencies and exploitive tendencies, right? In terms of that, one could argue that in so many ways, that a church that was about the gospel of liberation and social justice, right? In the king cone, I would even put in that tutu line of work. You see, there are many, of course, are down with that. But then there's also, another version of the Black church, which in so many ways, has become the opium of the people, right? And so heavenly bound that we have no earthly good. And you see what's happening to us is on earth, and it's a lot of bad stuff happening to us. So how do we then examine, whether, the Black church is dead or not? I give you the scripture I use, to examine whether a congregation or a follower of Jesus Christ is dead and therefore have not embraced the power of resurrection, right? And just the Isaiah text that says, "Seek ye first," right, the well-being, the shalom, the peace, right, of the community, city, country, or continent where I have sent you to. Pray to the Lord on its behalf, right? For it in each shalom and welfare you will find yours. Any pastor congregation, if that is not at the heart of your identity and your ability and your activity, right, then you are basically, on the path, right, to death, you see, because if you look at that scripture, it calls for a sense of intentionality, right? It calls for a sense of mutuality, right? And it also calls for a sense of intercessory, around how we connect and relate with our communities. You see, we cannot have folk, being content of being, what I call pew potatoes, and then after they get their fix at church, go and be couch potatoes and get right. You see what I'm saying? That is spectator, right? Christianity. You got to put some skin in the game, get in the game, because that's where Jesus is. Jesus is in the game, and he did that 2,000 years ago. And so let's not get too caught up in just what style we worship Jesus in, what's the latest trend of the song, how many followers I have on social media, right? But how many followers do I introduce to Jesus Christ, right? And let us really balance, the worship of Jesus with the fellowship of Jesus. After all, that's what he's like, follow me. And that's a powerful expression of worship.
Amen. Yeah. I'm listening to you, and I know we definitely need to get outside the walls of the church, participate, be active. You dropped a few nuggets there. Pew potatoes. I hadn't heard that one in a long time. There, I know that you have been very, very active in, advocating for the homeless in Los Angeles. I mean, all over the country, but in Los Angeles, Long Beach, everywhere where we are here in Southern California, homelessness is just overwhelming. What is the latest in your advocacy as you intersect with government to try to relieve the pressure of homelessness? And what do you see? What is the blessed hope to overcome homelessness? How do we get rid of homelessness in this country?
Yeah. Well, I mean, really, just to say, shout out, last night was the first night of the homeless count in the city and county of Los Angeles. And I was glad to join the team, at Alonzo Park in Lawndale. We were hosted there by Anetta Mack and her team. I was glad to see some of my young brothers, show up. So shout out to Emery and Nathaniel. We had folk there from Sanctuary of Hope, who I work with. The chair of the board came by to check on us. Another board member who's hosting a counter night in Watts, at Watts Labor, Shannon Murray. So we were all there with several other community members, basically, saying to our siblings who are homeless and houseless, Sawubona, right? That's
Sawubona.
I see you. Yes. Okay. We counting because you count, right? And it's important for us to see you. And that was part of the instructions, right? Don't interact. It's a sight count, it's a Sawubona count, right? So I said to them, we want to see, people's humanity. I had a cap on that says #hope, right? And that's a cap from the LA South Chamber of Commerce, #hope. And I said, I'm wearing this cap tonight because us going out, to say we count because our siblings on the street count is to let them know you might be homeless, but you're not hopeless. So we are signs of hope, right? But not just that, it is about not the quantity, but the quality, as well as the humanity of those whom we count. And that comes with responsibility and accountability, which is the responsibility of LASA leading the charge with all of us, right? As that city and county agency, that does that. I had the privilege of being appointed, by Mayor Eric Garcetti, and then kept on by Mayor Bass. So I served on that commission, that LASA commission, for 10 years. And that was just a privilege, around that. And during our time there, I was clear. Homelessness is a moral crisis that cannot be managed. Homelessness is a moral crisis that needs to be disrupted and destroyed. And to do that, we have to get real with the drivers and root causes of homelessness. We are, tiptoeing around the economic impact only. The rent is too damn high, y'all.
Yes.
People are being underpaid. Folk need a living wage. You see what I'm saying? In terms of that. And so how do we look at, not just dealing with the symptoms, right? But really get to the drivers. And how do we, as I said when I was at LASA Commission meetings, the room that we're sitting in now, the room that is your office, ought to be the biggest room for improvement, because we are in the business of upliftment, right? You see, then it's uplifting the lives of those, who are going. Now, Mayor Bass came, state of emergency was declared, safe inside, is there. But, this struggle continues. And so I'm glad to work with several, faith communities, faith collaboratives, as well as congregations, around how we rethink and reset, who we are and what we do, so that we can, be about that hope that we declare, be about that love that we preach and sing about, right? And to see, how we can facilitate that. I believe that the faith community is the sleeping giant in this. there is awakening taking place because our faith is a mandate. Our faith is a mandate to do something around this challenge of homelessness. Why? Because the person that we raise our hands to worship, the very person that we say we want to follow was homeless. There was no room in the inn. So any congregation, any pastor that's a follower of Jesus Christ who ain't doing nothing about homelessness, shame on you. Right? Then your worship, see, is an exercise in futility, right? How can you follow a Jesus who experienced homelessness and you ain't doing nothing about homelessness? Yes, you can't do everything, but doggone it, do something. See, and one knows that because we maintain buildings where we worship this Jesus who used to be homeless that stands empty most days of the week, and folk are sleeping outside. My God, is the black church dead? When we close our doors, right, of our so-called sacred spaces, and our sisters and brothers who are sacred in God's sight, whatever you do to the least of these, you do unto me, right? Are outside. How dare we? You see what I'm saying? And so that's the state that we are in. We got to get serious about this. This is a moral crisis, you see, and we cannot play around with it. You see, if you're going to pray for the folk who are homeless, pray with your eyes open, your hands open, your heads open, as well as your hearts open, and be about it, and not just pray about it, sing about it, do Bible study about it. But really, that's my passion around this.
Yes.
We got too many sacred spaces standing empty, right? Compromising the Great Commission, right? And this Jesus that was homeless, right? You see, around that, and we have folk, you see, who are, sleeping outside our sacred spaces. The fact that there are homeless people sleeping around our sacred spaces, in so many ways, they are saying to us, they are inviting us to say, we are the ones. Because whatever you do to the least of these, you do unto me. So let's do this. Let's rethink, let's reset, let's reposition, and let's repurpose. Because this is a moral crisis we need to end and not manage.
Let me ask you this, what would you say to that pastor, the deacon, the trustee, the missionary, whatever, that may be watching this, but they don't know how to interact? Maybe there's some folks, are a little intrepid before they hit these streets to get out there among the unhoused. And, it's a culture shock to some folks and everything. Where do they start? Where do they get training? What do they need to do? What would you say to them?
Well, I would say to them, there are various opportunities and ways to do so. Of course, we have to raise awareness, right? The way I did it, basically when I was at every one of my congregations, whether it was the one in San Francisco where I was at in 1996 to 1999, or the one in Oakland where I was from 2000 to 2007, or the congregation, that I was here in Los Angeles. It just helped people, one, connect the pulpit with the pew and the pavement, right? We let our message and the meaning of our message end, or just go on between the pulpit and the pew, and it never reaches the pavement. Right? That's why I talk about pew potatoes, you see, in terms of that. So there are several, movements going on, right? We have in the county, a movement called, the Faith Collaborative to End Homelessness, which is very much interfaith, you see, around how do we raise awareness. That group right now is doing various workshops. 2 of them are taking place this week. One took place yesterday. One is taking place tomorrow. And I can get that info to people, you can you have my email address. Just put my email address in your chat. That's one way, right? Just go and really raise one's awareness, around. That's one way that's going on. Pastor Shep Crawford, last year started what he called the Apology Tour. And the Apology Tour is basically a tour that really inviting congregations outside, right, their gated congregational communities, right? And I say that, meaningfully, because we get out of our car and rush into the sanctuary, right? We don't even look at the neighbors, right? And then we, get all Holy Ghost filled, and then we rush out of the building into our cars, you see, to get out of the neighborhood. You see what I'm saying? That's why your church is being broken into, because you don't connect with the neighborhood. You see, that's not part of the neighborhood, safety over there. Because you see. So the Apology Tour is basically, how do we invite folk out of our congregations, really take a disposition of humility and say to the community, we want to apologize for ignoring you. We want to apologize for not seeing you. We want to apologize for not connecting with you. We want to apologize, for not living up to that scripture that says, seek the welfare of the community that I've sent you to. So the church is ECM Church. The pastor is Pastor Shep Crawford. And this year, we're looking at seeing how we're taking that to a whole nother level by way of building the agency, of, pastors and the capacity of congregations to be able to engage, in this particular piece. LASA, when I was there, we were able to create the opportunity for how do LASA effectively, creatively, and intentionally connect with faith communities. So right now we have faith liaisons for each spot, right? So I would encourage you to check in with LASA around who is the faith coordinator or liaison for your SPA, and SPA stands for Service Planning Area, which is a county, term. There are, I believe, 8 SPAs, that we have. So a pastor can have a direct link, right, with the faith, liaison, and begin to hear and listen what LASA, has, available, around that. Let me go back to the Faith Collaborative for ending homelessness. We did a county-wide survey with faith communities. You see, around, what are the assets? What are people's understanding around that? And that, yielded, several priorities. Well, shout out to Grace and the folk at, Communities in Motion for working with that, for us. That inspired, these SPA-based capacity building workshops for faith, communities that's taking place. And then we can get that information, Greg, to you around that. So there are, a lot of that. We all did advocacy work, right? You need to get H and HHH passed, right? You see, we talked about the lack of provision. H and HHH made the provision, right? Right, and we now need the vision that will continue to connect with the provision, so we can get into the right direction to get to the destination. Come on, somebody. See what I mean? In terms
so
of
you're
that.
saying LASA. Explain to the people what that acronym means.
So LASA stands for Los Angeles County Housing Services Authority. And that is the commission, a joint commission between the city and the county of Los Angeles, with commissions appointed by supervisors and the mayor that really, work around how do we provide, services of dignity and quality, to those who are experiencing homelessness, houselessness. But not just that, but also to engage in the prevention of it. Again, not just the management of it. So for me, LASA's charge, right, is prevention, intervention, and elimination, right? Okay, you see, that's a positive trifecta. you see, that they are charged with, in terms of this. LASA, of course, has a new CEO, in terms of Dr. Adams Cullum, that's leading the charge there, around that. And she is, a woman of faith around this. Several other initiatives is going on. Shout out to the Los Angeles Metro Churches, under the leadership of Cheryl Branch. She's doing some work. And then we have so many agencies that are doing extraordinary work around the prevention, intervention, and elimination of homelessness, whether it is What's Labor, right? Whether it is, the initiative out of McCarthy Church with Pastor Anderson, whether it is, the work that Hopix, right, is doing, in South LA, but again, there's a lot going on, but not enough. But most of all, there's too much going on in silos, and the time is coming is now that we connect the dots. You see, think outside the box, because in the end, it is about the humanity of our sisters and brothers who die in the numbers of 2 to 3 every night. You see, because they are homeless or houseless and living on the streets, while thousands of sanctuaries are standing empty at night.
Mary is here from South Africa here. She's saying it's a great challenge. Currently, homelessness people are being exploited. Human rights are being violated. City buildings are being hijacked. And unimaginable things are happening to women and children. I know that's your folks right there, Mary, hitting us up all the way from the motherland.
That's not just my folks. That's my sister in my hometown. Lord have mercy. It's the South connecting with the South. As you know, I live at the intersection of South Los Angeles and South Africa, my brother. That's a good example of it in the transnational work that I'm doing. And Mary is part of our movement in South Africa that we are working on with the organization that I co-founded there, Beloved Community Coalition. And then she is a OBGYN at the largest trauma hospital in Southern Africa, Baragwanath, or Chris Hani Baragwanath in Soweto. So big ups and shout out to my sister from the South. Yeah. Yes.
There we go again, building bridges of music, arts, culture, social justice with Africa and African Americans. That's our mission around here, Hannibal Media Group, Coffee Conversations with Greg J. It's really, really something. We were together. It's so fun. I was so glad to see you at the Immigrant Magazine's event a couple of weeks back at the Afro City Marketplace over there in the Crenshaw District. Hadn't seen you in a while, and I just warm my heart every time I see you and everything. And I want to just kind of touch on the mission of that event, because I know there's a lot of rhetoric in the headlines that talks about immigration and got to protect our borders and all of that. And I think people's tendency is to, when they think about immigration issues, is to just focus on our brothers and sisters that are coming from Latin America. But talk about the immigration issues that face our Black brothers and sisters coming from the continent. Because they got a situation, trying to get into the country.
Yeah. No, you're right about that. Again, while I was in Oakland, I had the privilege to bridge across difference. When we brought together Black immigrants and African Americans to really, have a deep conversation about the whole piece concerning immigration and migration, right? Migration is an integral part, of the African American experience, whether it is the Middle Passage or, people going northward or westward. Isabel Wilkinson captures that
of the people.
You see, in terms of that, and you see, we have to look at it Greg, from the glacier that moves, the movement of people, right? Mm-hmm. Glacier is very important that people get this, is settler colonization and military occupation. You see, that's how we got here, right? You see, that's what's still happening on the continent, around this. The Color Purple. There are three movies I encourage folk to go and see. I'm trying to get my hands in the camera. One of them, The Color Purple, because The Color Purple brings together, right? What happens, around colonization on the continent, and what happens here around occupation of African Americans during, of course, human trafficking and enslavement, and then also Jim Crow around it. And really, Alice Walker brings these two worlds together in a profoundly powerful way. You see, we ought not to miss that. That's the connection for us. We ought to understand that the system in place that messed us up, that brought us here, messed us up on the continent, brought us here and continue to mess us up, right? It's the same system that continues to mess us up, and it manifests itself in various ways. For me in South Africa, it was, the ideology and the theology of apartheid. So that movie, I think, helps, with making that. And so we were able to do that, and hence the birth, of the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, right? The organization I co-founded with Reverend Lawson's younger brother, Reverend Phil Lawson, in the Bay Area. Wow. You see, in terms of that, Nana Jamfi and the team are doing extraordinary work. You see, just continuing, to live in that tension, of how do we, as Black people, understand, what happens to Black, migrants and our sisters and brothers, is part of the slogan that I coined when we launched Baji. And that is that our agenda in the immigrant rights movement is not to replace the civil human rights movement, you see, but to connect with it, collaborate with it, so that we can eventually realize a global human rights movement, you see, around that. So it's not just about who's taking whose jobs, right? It's who's moving an entire industry, right, somewhere else, and disenfranchise us to go and exploit other folk. And that exploitation then facilitates the movement of people because of the destructive tentacles of racial capitalism that knows no borders. Come on, somebody. So it's okay for me to bring the goods from the South, but not the people from the South. Come on now, that's hypocrisy, right? But that's how empire functions, you see? Sure. And so it's important that we just kind of get to know one another's stories and understand, you see, the glacier that moves all of this. Come on now. Caste, origin, Isabel Wilkinson, Ava DuVernay, that's in the movies right now. I encourage everybody, if you are still confused about the tension between, African or Black immigrants, and African Americans, go and see caste, and you realize that the same system that did our brothers and sisters wrong in the Caribbean is the same system that do us wrong here. The same system that did our brothers and sisters wrong on the continent is the same. France just left Niger. You see what I'm saying? Yes. Right? And we are still in the fight over here. So Lord knows we ought to defy the number one strategy of empire, which is deception and division and therefore destruction. And so that's I think those movies help me to invite people into a renewed consciousness, right? And not just take things at face value. Let's dig a little deeper, you see, into the fact that it's not about, a job. It's about an industry, right? You see, that's being moved around, you see, around. And the other movie I want to encourage folks to watch is American Fiction. You see,
I went to see it last night.
It was nominated, just like folk from Color Purple will be nominated, and folk from Origin will be nominated, right? These are movies that get to truth. Perception, right? They get the truth in a culture where people have been intoxicated by lies. You see, and last I checked, Scripture says you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free.
Sure.
You see what I'm saying in terms of that? So, so I just encourage us. There are several organizations. Let me say this last thing. I have the privilege of working with the folk at the Immigrant Magazine, and we right now are part of the whole movement around, stop the hate, against, Black immigrants and Asians. And I say to folk, we cannot stop the hate against anybody unless we stop the hate against our First Nations, right? Okay, and we stop the hate against African Americans. You see what I'm saying? Because prior to 1619, the focus was on the extermination. See, of settler colonialism of the First Nations. You see, I don't say Native Americans, I say the First Nations, because they never considered themselves American. That's a term foisted upon them by colonizers, right? You see what I'm saying? So as we talk about, and we are part of the Stop the Hate Stop the Hate against Black immigrants here in California, it's important for us to understand that if we want to stop the hate against Black immigrants, we must join forces with stopping the hate against African Americans. You see, because when the LAPD pulls me over, the LAPD doesn't say I'm pulling over a South African. The LAPD says I'm pulling over a Black male, and that's the code word to send 10 more cars out. You see,
yes, sir.
With extra bullets. You see, a helicopter over, us. You see, around. So we have to understand, as Dr. King said, we are all inextricably connected in a destiny of mutuality. We're in this together. It doesn't matter how you got here. We are in the same boat. And we will determine whether this boat will be a boat of liberation, or will it be a boat that will lead to destruction, the Titanic. Right. You see? Yeah. And we will determine that, but how we are willing to, one, bridge across difference, right? Engage in bold bonding, build the necessary bridges that we need to build, right? So that we can become the beloved community that the King has envisioned us to be.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's at the central, man, the beloved community. I want to ask a question. I'm listening and reflecting about immigration, the brothers and sisters coming from the continent here. But lately, Pastor Sauls, I've been really looking at, okay, I want to migrate to the continent, because every day on the news, I'm like, you know what? I'm out.
Well,
will I encounter? What do you think about brothers and sisters who say, I want to? We were saying expatriate, but we're going to call it repatriate. What do you think about the brothers and sisters who want to repatriate to the continent? What's your thoughts?
My thoughts on that is this. The empire of settler colonization and military occupation is all over the world. You will never be able to run away from it unless you're going to find a cave, right? But, they can detect you now with drones and all that stuff.
Drones and what?
Hello. What I encourage folks to do, look, South Africa is in a crisis, right? Don't migrate to South Africa and use that as a form of escapism. We need you, if you come to South Africa, to join the struggle for our complete liberation there, because right now we are under occupation, in so many ways, because of the social political condition in South Africa, how democracy has been mismanaged there, by the current government. In so many ways, they act like a regime, right? Who are in so many ways following the same principles, that apartheid follow in terms of deception, division, and destruction, right? That's why South Africa is the most unequal country in the world. So don't come to South Africa, you ain't willing to get into the struggle. Just like I say to immigrants, right? You may have left a war-torn country, you may have come from a refugee camp, but you know what? Seek your citizenship in the United States, but let it be a prophetic citizenship. Would you join the struggle to see, how we can continue to let this become a more perfect union, if it can be that, given what's happening right now. You see what I'm saying? Right? So I say to folk, I have people who say to me, well, Pastor Sauls, you have a country that you can call home. We don't. My word to you is you have a continent that you can call home, a continent that's in crisis right now. Still has the best and biggest potential in the entire world, even with its, corrupt leaders in some of these countries. But there are some leaders, you see, that are working very hard to do, the right thing. When I say to African Americans, you've got 54 countries you can choose from. If you don't want to do your DNA to find out where you're from, just choose a country. Study its history. Understand its socio-political challenges, its potential, its opportunities, and say, this is going to be my country. You travel there, right? And when you travel there, travel with a conscience. Don't travel like an ugly American. Lord have mercy.
Man.
See, because we've been infected and unaffected by that, right?
Yes.
Passion that we hold. You see what I'm saying? So I say you got 54 countries, right? Choose which one, right? Organize yourself around it and see how we can engage in transnational emancipatory and liberatory work from here, where we are in the belly of the beast. Come on, somebody, you see? Because it is the destructive tentacles, right, of U.S. foreign policy, you see, that continues to see how it can paralyze countries on the continent, in Central and South America, and in the Caribbean. To be clear about that, you see, then we have to understand that these tentacles of the U.S. foreign policy are the very same tentacles, pointed towards, deployed towards communities of color, or Black communities specifically in the United States. There's the connection. You can't run from South LA to South Africa and think you've reached paradise. Amen. My country's a beautiful country. I love you've been there. Yes. I mean, I tell people, now you know why the colonizer didn't want to go. And in fact, some of them still have outposts there right now that is seeking to undermine, the most progressive, democracies and constitutions in the world, around there. What I'm saying is, be a both and.
Yes.
Right? You see, but either way you're going to go, the invitation is, let us become a soul force, in the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Whether you are in South LA, right? I did the homeless count last week. Tomorrow night, I'm going to be on a phone call with people dealing with homelessness in Cape Town, South Africa.
Wow.
See what I'm saying? Because that's going down there. You see, we're working here with ceasefire around gang violence, around the issue of, drugs, and guns, right? Same thing in South Africa right now. The triple, the triple, paralyzing, issues in South Africa: gangs, guns, and drugs. See what I'm saying? So we gotta work on ceasefire over there as well. You see,
you said something really important there when you were talking about don't go over as the ugly American. And I would like to just amplify that point. Last year I went to Ghana for the second time, and I stayed a month and a half. Got an apartment, and got an apartment. I Ubered all over the place. I just wanted to be, up in there. Go to the grocery store, I just want to be in the mix. Yeah. So, and we went in December, and, Ghana in December is a thing among the diaspora, which I didn't know until I was researching the trip. Black folk from the UK, from Caribbean, from South America, Africa, from African nations, they converge on Ghana to celebrate the festive season. There's a festival and a concert and a party every night of the week. It's just incredible. You know, they're celebrating the Christmas season on steroids in Ghana.
Wow.
What I noticed when I went to the Afrocello, you know, I'm a radio veteran, so I had to go up at the music festival and see what they're doing. So I went to Afrocello, and I did notice the young Americans that were attending the concert, you know, our dress, you know, the booty shorts, the language, the things that are in our American Black pop culture, they expressed it over there. But what I don't think the young people saw is that they were given the Ghanaians culture shock. They're looking at us and they're like, oh, no. This is not what we do here. And I spoke to a couple of friends, and they were, you know, confirming what I was thinking in my mind. Is like, okay, they can't come over here and just like show the booty all over the place. You know, that's not working over here. This year, I'm seeing on social media, they had Afrocello, now it's called Afrofuture. Now what I'm seeing on social media is Ghanaians and Africans saying, Black Americans, don't bring that debauchery over here. This is not how we roll. This is adverse to our society, how, you know, what it is over here. And I just think that when we begin to consider travel to the continent, that we definitely have to take into consideration respect for societal norms over there. You know, they're not looking for gangsterism and stripper culture and all of these things that we're seeing here. You know, what do you see? Do you see this as you are?
Yes. I mean, I see it. As you know, I do transformational travel, you know, to the continent, not just there. You know, I do Cuba and the Caribbean. And part of, you know, all of this really is immersive experiences, you know, to raise awareness, broaden horizons, but most of all to see, you know, how we can breach across difference and become what is that we need to become. I call it how can we transform the breach, B-R-E-A-C-H, the breach that took place into a breach, you see, because there's been a breach, and that breach has been caused, you know, in so many ways, you know, on both sides. Come on now, on both sides, you see, it's been caused by, you know, settler colonization and military occupation. You see, so many ways on the continent, unless Ethiopia, where there was just occupation, you know, most of the African, you know, countries, you know, based on that conference in Berlin, most of their colonization took place. And that colonization was of culture, religion, you know, mentality, psychology, in all kinds of ways. Right. So we are all in recovery. We're all going through post-traumatic slave syndrome, post-traumatic apartheid syndrome. For me, we all are in recovery. Right. So I would say let's extend grace to one another, and let this grace be one of invitation and not condemnation. Right. So when I prepare a delegation, and I call ours delegations that go over there, you know, we do prep sessions. We have about 3 or 4 sessions with folk. Folk have to read something. They got to watch something. They got to listen to something about the particular community, because we are going to be in somebody else's house.
Yes.
Right? Okay. I went to the senatorial debate, right, the other day at somebody's house, right? And when I arrived there, my question was, do I take off my shoes?
Sure.
Right? Folk don't want your dirty, you know, shoes, soles on that beautiful carpet.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You know, because I'm coming into your house. So please, folk, let us realize we're going into somebody's national house. Right? Okay. And that immigration officer has absolute power, just like the immigration officer when I come back to the U.S. He can ask me anything and interpret it as in any way he wants to. Press a button, you know, alarms will go off, dogs will come out, folk will come out with machine guns and all that stuff, and I'll be whisked away.
Yes, sir.
That's the same thing regardless of your American passport. Let us be what our mamas taught us. Unfortunately, not too many mamas and daddies teach right now. Come on now. You see what I'm saying? So, you know, humility, right, is key as you arrive in these countries. You have to understand people's, dress code, right? I live at the intersection of South LA and South Africa. Yes, some of the fashion is the same, but some of it ain't. Right? Now, I should say, you shouldn't walk over there, with half your booty showing. That shouldn't just be for Ghana. It should be for here as well.
Yes, sir.
You see, in terms of that, not that I'm condemning, the fashion statement that you're trying to make, right? But many, many times, what you wear on the outside, is a reflection of what's going on the inside. You see, in terms of that. So all I'm saying is we prepare people to go. I want to recommend to people a book that Ben McBride introduced me to. Ben McBride is the CEO of Empower Initiative. Here in California, we work together around the bridging across differences, the bonding, the becoming, you see, and fighting otherization. Right? He introduced me to a book called The Four Pivots by Sean Greenwright. In that, Sean talks about, as we live our lives and as we see what we see, right? We can either look at it as, we can see through a lens, or we can see through a mirror, right? The mirror is, am I trying to, is what I'm seeing a reflection of me, right? Because that could create some turbulence. Or what lens am I bringing with what I see and how I interpret what I see? You see, so I say to folk, if you get somewhere, and you are uncomfortable, don't force your discomfort on the people there. Ask yourself, why am I uncomfortable? Because then you move from mirror to lens, or from lens to mirror. See what I'm saying? Around that. So preparation for me, is key in bringing folk. And I would do the same if I bring folk, from South Africa to the United States. You got to prepare people, because settler colonization has done a work on all of us. We all got to be decolonized. All of us. You see, because they've shared the script, right? They've texted each other, they've Facebooked each other, right? They send a Willie Lynch letter all over the world. Come on, somebody. You see? But let us know this is how you subdue these folk, mess them up, mess them over, confuse them. And here we are all still in recovery. So let's be graceful to one another. Let's be humble towards one another. Let's be open towards one another. Let's seek to learn from one another. And what you don't understand, ask a question about it. I tell people there's no dumb question for me. I'd rather let you ask a dumb question than do a dumb thing.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah, so, it's really, really important. And
I'm a huge proponent, of African Americans, you see, traveling so that we can both raise awareness and raise consciousness, because it will help us, transform the breach into a bridge.
Yeah. I organize groups too. We're going to Ghana, we'll go to South Africa, and those information sessions are most definitely important. They're essential. You know what I'm saying? I mean, essential in all caps. I know you have a delegation going pretty soon. You want to kind of tell us, share with us the how we can link up with your delegation, and then scones and drones. I see you. I want to get to your question. We're running out of time, but I do want to get to your question. But well, how do we get up on your delegation there, Pastor Sauls?
Well, the delegation that we do, we will be we're doing Southern Africa, the end of April, beginning of May. We'll be in South Africa, we'll be in Zimbabwe, and we'll be in Botswana. Our delegation is by invitation only. Greg, you have the flyer. So my word to you was, you send that to the people that you would like to travel with. Right.
Okay.
And we invite people to do so. We try and keep our delegations not more than 20 people, because we want for it to be intimate, because it's very, very immersive, around that. And so it is community engagements. We go and we experience the culture, we see the beauty of the land. We were going onto some safaris, but really it's about how we invite people to join us in making memories, right? But also to see how we can invite them into making a difference, because there are humanitarian projects connected to it. And I would just say, Foken, Greg, I wish I had the flyer to put up, because we have an information session tomorrow at 12:30 and one on Saturday evening at 6 p.m. But Greg, I would just say, Foken hit you up, and you can just forward that to me, and then I can be in touch with them around. But yeah, this is, by invitation only, and limited spaces available.
That's what's up. I love it. I love it. I love it. All right. Let me get with Scones and Drones before we get out of here. We'll circle all the way back to our conversation about homelessness. And I'm glad that Scones and Drones asked this question, because I was going to ask you, now that I'm, I was in LA, Inglewood, and now, I'm migrated out, immigrated to the Long Range. So funny. And, homelessness is, man, I mean, the mayor, Rex Richardson, also has a state of emergency. He follows very closely with Karen Bass in LA. And Scones and Drones is asking fellow Long Beachian here, what is the best first step for moving the needle on confronting homelessness in the LBC? And is it jobs? Is it a mental health and illness? Looking at family infrastructure? What is it? How do we start in Long Beach? Give us some counsel in that way.
Thanks for that, Scones and Drones. In fact, I like that name, Scones and Drones. I'm going to have to go find me some scones now. I think, first of all, it's three things. It starts with analyze, and then after that, it starts with organize and then mobilize. Why do I say analyze first? Because you see, the questions you ask about why this crisis is what's going to lead you to what you need to organize and mobilize, or how you need to organize and mobilize, or who you need to organize and mobilize. You see, to that analysis, I would say, bring a disposition of prevention. We have to get to the bottom of the drivers. Right? Otherwise, we are just dealing with symptoms, and we're not dealing with the root causes, right? And in these root causes, it's multidimensional. That's why there has to be multidimensional resolutions and solutions for it. It has to do with the fact that people are not just unemployed, but they are underemployed, right? It has to do with the fact that the rent is too damn high, and we allow the rent, to be controlled by the market, talking about that it's an invisible hand. There ain't no invisible hand in the market, okay? When my rent is increased, guess what? There's somebody that signs where that letter's coming from about the increase. There ain't no invisible hand. I know exactly whose hand that is, you see? So let's be clear about who the hand is. Thirdly, I am a huge proponent of asset-based solutions or intervention. So prevention, intervention, as I said earlier on, and then, elimination. Everybody can do something. We have assets, to that. Yes, there are mental challenges, but not everybody, who becomes homeless or houseless has a mental challenge. But the longer they stay on the street, they will have a mental challenge, you see, around that. You see, we have too many elderly people becoming homeless or houseless now. Why? Because the rent is too damn high. Based on their Social Security and the ever increasing rent, they cannot, pay the rent. There are a lot of children, a lot of transition age youth that are homeless. It's a multi-generational crisis, right? Babies on the street. Right, I got a call the other day about a brother with 3 children that we're trying to find, a place to, be with his children with dignity and keep them together. Right, we don't want to do what Trump is doing. We don't want to do what human trafficking / slavery has done, which is to separate. See, families. No, we want to make sure we do whatever we can to keep them together. So I would say, ask, the right question to analyze the situation, and then, organize for intervention with the faith community, with businesses, with government. We cannot leave government out of it, but they can do it by themselves. And you all know, in so many ways, whether it's in South Africa or the United States, right? Government in many, many ways lack creativity and innovation. Mm-hmm. We sometimes got to bring that to them, right? In terms of that. And then, mobilize for elimination. And that has to be systemic. It has to be, preventative. And most of all, it has to be, from an emancipatory perspective, you see, because it is systemic. Let me give you a biblical example around that. I'll give you the example of the Good Samaritan. The two best sermons I've heard preached on that text is from the Reverend Dr. Martin King Jr. Mm-hmm. and the Reverend Dr. J. Alfred Smith from Oaktown, Allen Temple Baptist Church. You see, where essentially they both saying, right, we have to make a choice. Are we always going to pick up the victims on the Jericho Road, or are we going to begin to ask the hard questions about why is this road so dangerous? Can we engage in some re-envisioning of the infrastructure of this road? Can we get some lights on this road? Can we work for some security on this road? Why we always got to come, right, and pick up the victim? You see, now the Good Samaritan, did what he had to do. Oh, no, it was the Samaritan, right? We said it became good. Because as a Samaritan, he was nobody and nothing. He was in a whole different caste, right? You see, right? But he was the one who basically, as Dr. King said, asked the right question. Because all of us, including people of faith, will ask, what will happen to me if I stop to help this houseless person or this homeless person, right? Dr. King says we have to, ask the first right question, which is, what will happen to this person if I don't stop, see, to help them, to ask a question, just to see them, Sawubona, you see what I'm saying? Just to inquire, just to humanize them. What will happen to them as they find themselves in a state, a system, a process, a pathway of dehumanization, you see, around that. And I think that's what helps me, stay on the battlefield, around it, is to ask the hard questions, no matter who is in office, whether that person look like me, talk like me, we have to ask the hard questions because we ought to be, prophetic in the work that we are doing. So homelessness, houselessness is a multifaceted, multidimensional challenge and crisis. There's no one fix. The fix has to be multidimensional and multi-sector. There's no one person. There's no one church. There's no one organization. There's no one department. You see? That's why we got to bring in DCFNS. We got to bring in mental health. You see, we got to bring in law enforcement, both the PD and the SD. You see, around this, so we all can come together, surround our brothers and sisters with humane solutions around this moral crisis that must not be managed. You see, but must be disrupted and destroyed. We all must come together. You see, Greg, you and I met at the intersection of this crisis when Africa.
We did. Facts.
Was murdered by Angeles Police Department in Skid Row.
Yep.
That's how we connected.
That's how we connected. Facts.
We covenant that we will humanize this brother. We covenant that we will surround his family with support. We covenant that we will give him a funeral that is fit of a king.
Yes, sir.
And we did that.
We did it.
See, right? That's how we connected.
We did that.
You see, you took a risk by calling me. I took a risk by taking your call, right?
Yeah.
You see, African American, Black immigrant coming together, and look at where we are right now. That's the vision. That's the goal. It's possible, and I believe we'll get there. Despite what's happening in this consequential year of 2024.
All right, there you go, Pastor Kelvin Sauls. Look, progressive, prophetic, Pan-Africanist. Love it. Thank you so much for joining us. Coffee Conversations with Greg J. Man, our time is over here, but we're gonna keep it all there, Pastor. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your heart. It's important information. I can see that we're touching the people, and man, just thank you as you go about your day. May God protect you and direct your path, and keep on doing what you do.
Trusting Thursday, baby. Thanks, man.
Thursday. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Much love. Much love. Yeah, Coffee Conversations is available. What are we on? Several Facebook pages, including the homepage, which is Coffee Conversations with Greg J. You can hit us up on Beach City Radio, beachcityradio.com. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Instagram, y'all. Also, we're also on YouTube. And there on YouTube, please like and subscribe to that channel. We're trying to up our YouTube game, and brand new is live over there on Instagram, and that's really, really great. We also repurpose our audio to go on podcast, and wherever you get your favorite podcast, just type in Coffee Conversations with Greg J. You can find us on Spotify, iHeart, Google, wherever, Spreaker, wherever, just say Coffee Conversations with Greg J, and you can listen to the audio on your digital device, in your car, whatever you need to do. All right, y'all. Remember, love one another. Love one another. Love one another. Peace and blessings.